Hi, I'm Jay Burney, and welcome to our 15th taping of our Keeping Connected series produced by Birds on the Niagara TV and the Pollinator Conservation Association. In this show, we're talking with Tara Cornelisse. Tara works for the Center for Biological Diversity. She's based in Portland. She's an expert in insect conservation, and she's doing a lot of global-focused projects as well as Great Lakes-focused projects. She's a friend of mine. She's one of the board members of the Pollinator Conservation Association. I've worked with her on a number of sites on the Outer Harbor at Times Beach, and she's really helped us learn a lot about the kinds of insects, the kinds of other wildlife and plants, and generally the biodiversity of places like the Outer Harbor in Buffalo. Hey Tara, it's really great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too, Jay.
We've missed you since you left Western New York. How is it living out in the great Northwest?
It's beautiful. I mean, I really enjoy the green all year. It does get cold here, but not quite as cold as Buffalo. And, this is the land of conifers, and so we have green all the time, and it is really nice. Yeah.
Well, you and I first met a bunch of years ago. You were at Cornelisse in Buffalo, and I was working on various projects, Times Beach Nature Preserve, Pollinator Conservation Association. You helped us form that. You're still on our board and want to thank you. Now you're working for the Center for Biological Diversity. You've got some very important projects, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. This conversation tonight is about World Migratory Bird Day, and it's about how birds connect us. That's kind of the conservation theme. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump into a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk, why are birds important?
Well, so I'm an insect person. I've been studying and working on insect conservation my whole career. And so when I think about the importance of birds, I tend to think of them through the lens of insects. And lately, with the news of insect declines and the science of insect declines and the actuality of insect declines, birds have really become a more visible face to insect declines. And so I think that speaks, to just the connection between all living organisms and the similar things they need, just lots of habitat that's free of pesticides, and just, the space to live. And so for me, the importance of birds can be that connection to other living things because they are so visible, and so many people love bird watching and seeing birds in their backyard. They're a great tool to educate about. And so they're a great kind of gateway to make the connection between, what's going on with insects, the loss of insects and how that is in turn impacting in birds as well.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the loss of insects. I mean, we're having a decline in bird populations. 2.9 billion birds have vanished from the planet since 1970. What's happening with insects?
Yeah, so, I've been studying insect conservation for quite a while, and, there have been reports of insects declining. And of course we have endangered insects that get protected that are more specifically impacted by human activities. But lately, there's been science report after science report coming out, just really showing us the massive scale of insect losses, particularly in the last few decades, since the early 1990s. And so a couple of really breakthrough studies came out in the last couple of years showing us that these, people who have monitored insect populations for over 30, 40 years in some cases, have shown this steep decline in not only abundance of insects, but also diversity of insects and not only specific groups. For a long time, we really knew that bees weren't doing well and butterflies weren't doing well, but now it's just kind of this mass, all of them, a recent meta-analysis just came out. There's been some kind of controversy as well. And, but that sort of showed, that yes, in fact, pretty much everywhere we look, terrestrial insects are declining, by about 10% per decade. And so that results to about 30%, if you start back a few decades ago. So, and that really lines up with everything else that's coming out. So it's a pretty dire situation for insects.
How does that work in the Great Lakes? I mean, same situation, I'm sure, but are there any specific kinds of insect declines that we should be aware of?
Yeah, the Great Lakes are such a unique ecosystem. I mean, I live in Oregon now, but I grew up in Michigan, and then I lived in Buffalo for a while, and so I got to experience their natural wonder and beauty there. And I know it's with all the water, it's an extremely important area for migratory birds, and birds in general. And so it's also extremely important area for insects. Particularly, there's an issue with bumblebee decline around the world pretty much, but we've been really seeing declines in Europe and North America. And there's the rusty patch bumblebee, which is a rare species that has been listed as endangered under the Endangered Species Act. There's also the American bumblebee that occurs there that's on the decline, as well as the yellow-tailed bumblebee. I'm trying to think of all the species, but there's quite a few species in that area that are not doing well. In turn, it's such a great place for monarch butterflies. And this, Jay, I mean, you get so many monarchs out like along the shore of Lake Erie. And of course, monarchs are also, not doing well. Last year, they kind of had a little bit of an upswing in their overwintering grounds, but this year they're back down again. And even though they have that upswing, it used to be 30 years ago up here, and now it's down here. It might be backwards for you looking at it. So it's not good news, and they're also potentially could be protected under the Endangered Species Act.
There's a couple more topics I want to get to before we're done tonight, and one of them is, how birds connect us, how insects connect us. I mean, you gave a great example, monarch butterflies. Let's talk about the social connection. I mean, the butterflies that are in North America, whether on the Pacific coast or the East Coast, mostly on the East Coast, go to mountainous region, Mexico, and their culture is really all about that monarch return. I think Day of the Dead is celebrated around the return of the monarchs. So we have that cultural connection, and obviously physical connection with the ways animals migrate, the way biodiversity migrates. Biodiversity does, I don't know if migrate's the right word, but it does get affected. The Amazon biodiversity is affected by us in here. Your biodiversity in Portland is affected by us. We have Bonaparte's gulls that come through here in the winter in incredible numbers that nest on the West Coast near you. So there's that, and I get off my soapbox for a minute. What I really want to talk to you about is what we can do. One of the things we do is we're learning more about bees here, and we know we haven't seen the rusty patch bumblebee here. We used to see American bumblebees, but we're doing more research and studies that you helped us learn about. What else can we do?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, just to kind of back up for a couple of things you mentioned, migration, I think, is really important, and it connects us. We, right now in Portland, we're just starting to see the Vox swifts return, and during the winter, they go down to Central America and Venezuela. And my gosh, they're just so cool. And they're right now it's evening here, right? It's almost 5 o'clock. And so they're out there kind of flying around catching insects, and we just started seeing them. It's really fun to see them return. And then in the city of Portland, in a chimney, I believe it's the biggest kind of congregation of Vox swifts in a chimney, and we get to go watch that. And so that brings us together, kind of like you were saying with this cultural significance between the countries, but also just kind of, it's so fun to go out there and sit on a blanket at night and watch the swifts like come back and circle above the chimney and go down into the chimney, and it's just full of hundreds of people, and Audubon gets to take the opportunity to do a lot of really great education around the birds and the importance. Of course, they only eat insects, and so we need to think about the connection between the flying insects and their viability as well. So yeah, that's a kind of a cool connection we have here as well.
I know that you've worked on something called a roadmap, which is about what we do to protect the earth. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, right. So kind of getting to that question about what can we do, right? It's a good question. So, there's this whole idea of like individual actions, and then of course like global, national actions, right? And we need all of it. And so I was part of this international group of scientists who published just earlier this year, I think January, a roadmap to insect conservation, basically. And what it does is just to kind of outline the steps and shows that, really, we really can do this. We really can turn the curve around and start protecting these insects. And there's multiple ways this can be done. One of the biggest issues is change in the way we grow food, right? Agriculture is a big issue for the conservation of not only insects, but also birds. Particularly in the last 30 years, we've seen a really big increase in use of really insect toxic pesticides and bird toxic pesticides called neonicotinoids. And the problem with them is that they're used to treat seeds, and so before the seed even goes into the ground, it's coated with the pesticide. And studies, obviously, this is really terrible for insects. It messes up their ability to find food to eat. It can kill them outright, but also that these effects have been shown on birds as well. And then, of course, it indirectly impacts birds because they, don't have as many bugs to eat. And so just like the way we grow food is a really big issue. And so different nations are starting to realize this. In fact, the entire European Union just banned nicotinoids a couple of years ago. And Germany is really leading the way with kind of an insect conservation action plan, which includes this change of the way that they have their industrial agriculture, which is a reduction of pesticides, also creating habitat in those agricultural lands as well for insects. Of course, once the pesticides are gone, because you don't want to draw them in and poison them, right? And so doing that on a national scale is really important. Just thinking about how we can grow our food in a more eco-friendly way, and we benefit too, right? I mean, those chemicals, they haven't really been studied their impacts on humans, and they're made to kill living beings, and so we don't know what's going on, and of course, so that benefits us as well.
Tara, we all believe in think global, act local. We have micro patterns of doing things like growing food the right way and learning about the issues and then actually protecting land. I really proud to know you. I think you're a international hero. The work that you do, and it's so wonderful. It's so wonderful to be your friend and to have been able to work with you these years, and lots to come. And we're all going to hang in there. We're in this pandemic, and it's a tough time. But thank you all for tuning in. I asked you one more question. Where can people find out about your work?
Oh yeah, so right now I'm a senior scientist at the Center for Biological Diversity, and so you could go to the Center for Biological Diversity's website, and then I have a Saving the Insects campaign, so you can Google for that. Another place, if you just Google my name, you could find some of my publications, things I've written as well, if you'd like to read that. But I think Saving the Insects campaign is really a showcase of what my work I'm doing right now.
Well, great. Thanks so much. We'll put a link up to all that. And again, thank you so much for visiting with us tonight. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for all you do.